All right, welcome to Let's Cool One, everybody. Let's Cool One with Jack Macklin. We got a special guest here today, Reuben Stump. What's up, Reuben?
Not much. What's up, Jack?
Not much, man. Just hanging out here in Chicago. You know, we're gonna talk a little music, a little life. Reuben's a bass player, just new to Chicago. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me, man.
Yeah.
I have been living in the city for about 2 weeks now. I'm in my third week of living in Chicago, and I'm really loving it so far. I hail from Michigan. I grew up in a little farm town of Diamonddale, which is a little southwest of Lansing, the capital of the Mitten State.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, and so I grew up there, and I went off to U of M, University of Michigan, for my undergrad degree in jazz bass, and went to MSU for my grad degree, and now I'm living here.
Yeah. So what brought you to Chicago?
Well, my girlfriend and I decided to move here together just because we had visited during our time in grad school, my time in grad school. Visited a couple times and really loved it. And she also is currently in her grad schooling. She's doing a work study out at Worsham College. And upon reading about Worsham, she was like, "Oh man, this is a great school. I really want to go to." So
what's Worsham College?
Worsham College of Mortuary Science. So she's studying to be a funeral director.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
wow, that's wild. That's a wild job.
It's very interesting. Yeah.
So like putting dead people together and like making sure like putting the makeup on them.
Yes,
and stuff
doing
like that?
the restorative arts. And helping families through their grief, and making arrangements with the families and planning funerals. And she currently lives in a funeral home.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, which is very cool and different.
Dang. Okay. So how's it like going over there?
Oh, it's fun. I mean, the people she works with are great, and she lives down in the basement next to the prep room.
Oh shoot! So there's like dead people right next to you guys?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I just don't go in the room where they're at.
Right. Yeah.
But once you get inside her apartment, it's pretty nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty chill. Good. Well, that's cool. And then you were up in Rogers Park, right?
Rogers Park, yeah.
Yeah. How do you like that neighborhood?
I really like it a lot. It's really cute. I love all the old buildings, and it's great. I love it so far.
Yeah, that's awesome. So obviously it's like, your girlfriend and you're a bass player, is that something you're trying to do full time professionally?
Yeah.
And how did you get into bass, I guess?
How did I get into bass?
How did you get into music, in
music.
general?
Oh.
I guess that's two different things, right?
Even deeper, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, how did you, I guess decide that you wanted to play bass professionally or do music professionally?
Yeah. Well, I knew from a very young age that I wanted to do music. And I went through all these different phases of instruments because my dad would go antiquing and garage sailing, and he loved to collect all these different instruments. So he'd bring them home. And I picked up a ukulele when I was a kid. And so I actually started learning a lot of like jazz tunes and standards on ukulele before I started, really
you know who else did that?
learning jazz. Is who?
George Benson.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in his biography, he talks about how he got a ukulele first and was singing and playing ukulele on the street, and they called him Little Georgie, and that's how he first made money.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, that's exactly what I did. Yeah.
That's crazy.
I would do like farmers markets and nursing homes and singing all these old standards. Yeah. My brother played trumpet.
Okay.
And so we had a little duo together, the Stump Brothers.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You guys still play?
My brother currently lives in Germany.
Oh, wow.
So no.
What's he doing over there?
He works for a software company called Witron, and they do like warehouse processes for like all these major companies, and they do shipping, and he does the programming for them.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Cool.
he lives in
Does
on
he
an
do music over there? At
ancient
all?
volcano in Bavaria.
Oh wow, that's wild.
Yeah, right.
The Stump Brothers.
Yep.
Oh man. So shout out to him. Does
Yeah,
he still play?
he's got a horn. Yep, he's got a horn with him. So I think he plays a little bit.
So
here and there.
you ukulele and trumpet duos?
Yes.
That's killing. Man.
Yeah, and then I picked up flute in school. So I played flute from middle school through high school. Yeah, loved playing the flute. I thought I was going to be a classical flute player
Wow.
before I picked up the bass. But how I picked up the bass was we just had one because of my dad's antiquing and garage sailing addiction.
No way.
No, it's-
That's wild.
So it was just sitting in the corner, and I knew I had to, if I wanted to study jazz in school, I couldn't really do the flute exclusively, so I had to pick something else, and so I picked the bass. And my dad's cousin is a bass player. He plays for the Lansing Symphony, and he also does jazz and rock and all this stuff. So he was a great bass teacher, bass player, luthier in Lansing named Ed Fedewa.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So he was your dad's friend?
My dad's cousin.
Your dad's cousin.
Yeah.
And so he was like your first teacher when you were first,
Yeah. Yep, my first bass teacher. Yep.
Wow. Okay. So so how old were you when you picked up the bass then? Well, I was
15.
15.
Yeah.
Okay. So you still like because I was gonna say, how come you chose bass over like vocals if you were singing, vocal jazz,
Right.
studying that, or did you just know that bass was for you once you picked it up?
Well, people always told me that people would need bass players.
Yeah, right. I mean,
And I was like, that might be a good business MO later on down the road, which turned out to be true.
yeah. I mean, man, for anyone listening out there, like, pick up the bass.
That's right.
How
Yep.
but they are expensive. So sounds like you had a good situation where your dad kind of just had one around.
Yeah, right. He got
Yeah.
it from like a storage unit in Arizona
Yeah.
or something like that.
Oh, really? So
yeah,
he was like
for cheap.
He just was it one of those things where you just like bid on the unit and there happened to be a bass?
Or I think something like that. Yeah. Yeah,
Dang.
an old K bass was my first bass. Yeah.
I've always thought about what would it be like to do that, like Storage Wars? You've seen that?
Yeah.
To where like maybe you could hit it big, like one day, you like auction off a unit and like some people like go in there, there's a bunch of
Right.
gold jewelry, there's all this amazing stuff. You never know what you could find.
Right.
But I guess it is a big gamble,
Yeah, true. Well, garage sailing is more safe.
Yeah.
My dad's biggest score, as far as musical instruments at garage sales go, was a Hammond B3.
Whoa.
It was this old lady, this was an estate sale. This old lady who was a church organist for many years. The family didn't know what she had. They had a mint condition Hammond B3 from the 50s, and they were selling it for like $300 or something. And my dad knew exactly what it was, so he was like, I'm taking this organ.
Man, how much are those worth? They're pretty.
10 to 12,000.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Hammond B3.
In good condition.
If I look one up, Hammond B3 for sale, like, oh yeah, $11,000.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that was my dad's biggest score. Yeah.
That's crazy. So do you have a B3 back in Michigan?
We had it for a long time. He bought it hoping we would learn to play it, but I sadly wasn't, too interested in it as a kid. But now I wish I would have played it more.
Right.
So he ended up selling it.
Dang. Let's go back to so like when you were playing with your brother, the Stump Brothers. Like, how did you guys decide jazz tunes? How was that like a decision?
That had just been what we grew up listening to.
Really?
Like our dad always, he's a music lover, of all different kinds of music and genres and styles, but jazz was a big one that we listened to a lot. So
was it like like classical, like classic jazz, like traditional jazz, like type of New Orleans type of
A
stuff,
whole mix of
you
everything.
were just singing what like anything?
Yeah,
You
I
know?
mean, we listened to like a lot of like Louis Armstrong and Ella Fitzgerald, Nat King Cole, a lot of like vocal jazz, Sarah Vaughan and Mel Torme.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so you knew you wanted to be a singer and sing and play.
Not at the time.
Yeah,
I just knew I wanted to play jazz in some capacity.
yeah. So were you like improvising on the flute?
Yeah, yeah. I started to transcribe in high school a little bit, and also Jethro Tull was a big uh, fascination at the time.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Jethro Tull?
No, who's that?
They were like an English prog rock band from the 60s and 70s, and
Oh, no way.
the lead singer plays flute.
Okay.
And he does like a lot of crazy, like he sings and plays and flutter tongues and does all this crazy stuff on the flute. So I would pick up a lot of his licks and stuff.
Dang. Okay. So, did you want to like do like prog rock? You know, at the time.
I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Just love music.
I just loved music. I think I knew I wanted to do jazz somehow, some way.
Man, that's awesome. Like, my story about like getting into music was, I guess, kind of similar. You know, like my mom and sister both took guitar lessons. You know, and they both eventually quit because it hurt their fingers. So there was like just a guitar in the house. You know, and I was like took curiosity to it, and just kind of picked it up and started playing. And I guess that was one of my first like introductions into playing music. My cousin was a big influence because he also played the guitar and trumpet, which is what I played the trumpet as well. And so my cousin Chris was a huge influence on me and like deciding to pick it up. I saw him playing rock bands when I was young, but no, like the guitar, I think it was just my mom and sister had one, and I kind of took the guitar when they stopped playing and really took a liking to it. And I think I did like. When I was in third grade or something, we played Bad to the Bone, or I played Bad to the Bone at my third grade talent show, and I wrote like my own lyrics to it about how I was like a badass, like walking the halls or something in school. It was like I walk the halls, so it was something really goofy.
Yeah,
but like,
and then you were the king of third grade. After
yeah, and I kind of knew ever since then that like I loved doing music.
That's
and
cool.
Like it was exactly what I wanted to do, because my stepdad's a musician, but he didn't come into my life until I was a little later in middle school after I already played. So like my early influences, you know, was like, I think that was one of the big things that got me into it. But, you know, my dad's not a musician, or my mom's not a musician. My sister's not. My cousin was, and like, I think he kind of stopped playing, but, yeah, it's kind of like I didn't really grow up in a musical family. So like being around music and picking jazz and like that whole thing was a little bit different of a journey for me. I think because I kind of got exposed to jazz in high school. Well, in middle school a little bit. Like I think we had an audition jazz band in middle school, and I was like really knew that I wanted to do it, and there was another guy my age who was like in the jazz band, and I was like I'm gonna practice this audition music so hard, and I'm gonna make this jazz band. And it was like some etude, and I think I played like a Joe Pass transcription or something, and I practiced it like all summer, like a chordal transcription.
Yeah.
Like it was something that was super hip, but I didn't really understand what was going on at the time. I just was like, I'm just gonna learn the tabs of this Joe Pass transcription and play it for my band director, and I'm just gonna learn the shit out of it. And so I did, and then I got the spot in the jazz band, and I was just like, man, this is so cool, and this is what I want to do. And I like worked harder to get in the other audition bands. I went to St. Charles East High School in St. Charles, Illinois. That's where I'm from. But you know, I think it was more like just having a lot of really good peers that were into it. In high school, I had this gig that at this probably will have said it a lot on the show later, but I had a gig at this Chinese restaurant in my hometown called Szechuan. We got paid like orange chicken and $25, and this lady Nancy like hired us, and it was like Friday and Saturday night. But I think it was like when I discovered that you can make money with music, I was like, man, this is what I have to do.
Yeah.
You know, because I just thought it was so cool, you know, and I worked really hard at it. But you know, I think that was kind of when I decided I want to do. But you kind of knew from a young age that you wanted to do music.
Yeah.
Then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, because I was in rock bands in middle school and like all different types of things. I still love that type of music, but how I got into jazz specifically, I think it was like a progression from like rock to jazz. Like, you know, I saw the people older than me play. There was this really talented dude who went to my high school, also went to DePaul to study music. His name was Zach Nunnery. And he was a very talented guitar player. And when I first saw him solo, and I was like, I was kind of like, damn, like you could do that with the guitar. Like I had no idea that you could like deliver such a strong, you know, message without saying words, you know. And I thought that like that was the coolest thing, you know. And he really inspired. He didn't only inspire me; he inspired a lot of other, you know, great Chicago musicians who also went to my high school. There was like. In the span of 4 years, there was like 10 to 11 kids that went on to do jazz.
Wow.
You know,
my goodness.
Yeah. So I feel like it's a relatively high number for like a niche degree.
Yes.
Yeah. You know,
absolutely.
And like, I feel like it has to do with my old band director, Jim Cole from St. Charles,
Okay,
but he's now retired, but also Zach, who, unfortunately passed away, but he was just such an inspiration, and I'll always like remember that inspiration. Wow. And, just amazing voice he had on the instrument at such a young age. Because I think if it wasn't for him, all those people I don't think would have really gone on to do music. Because he was like the oldest out of everyone. It was like kind of like a group of people, and he kind of started that trend, or I don't know if we want to say trend, but like, you know, started that wave of really people who were curious about the music.
Wow.
And I think that, and I was kind of on the last half of that wave, but yeah, you know,
it's deep.
It
That's
is super
beautiful.
deep. Yeah, it's super beautiful and deep. Like, you know, I hope he's doing well, you know, up there. But yeah, man. So yeah, what do you think about that whole story?
It sounds like you got to start in it because of a community, and it sounds like you were. You learned it through a nurturing kind of community. Right.
It was like, it was different. It's like, it's so weird. And I feel like it's interesting because it's like, I don't know how I feel about this approach, but like, you know, in the last 50 to 60 years, like, you know, jazz and that type of thing has been taught in schools, and it hasn't been taught in schools in that way in forever. I mean, it's created a whole industry in colleges and high schools and, you know, all these types of things. But like, you know, if you go back more than 60 to 70 years, you know, a professional jazz musician like didn't get really exposed to jazz in high school. There wasn't like a jazz band he could go to. He had to go to like a club and like, you know, hear the music from there. So like, what's your take on like having jazz in schools and like that type of route for learning the music?
Yeah, well, say what you will about it, but I think for me it's been crucial because I didn't really have a community. I mean, I am from Lansing. You know, Rodney Whitaker lives right there, and all these, you know, amazing people affiliated with MSU. But at that age, I wasn't quite, you know, sure about what I wanted to do with jazz quite yet, and I was certainly the only kid in my town and my high school who was interested in that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I had an interest, but not a full grasp of what the music really was until I went to University of Michigan.
Really? And so that was your undergrad then, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And what was that experience like for you?
Oh, it was really broadening. I got to meet all these amazing people from around the world, and the thing about U of M is everybody comes at jazz from a different kind of perspective, which is really cool to see. A lot of people come at it from maybe like the singer-songwriter point of view, and or jazz fusion, or like hard bop, and I was coming at it from like early jazz standards, basically, perspective. I mean, I knew about Miles Davis, and I knew about John Coltrane, but that's when my education really began. Yeah.
So when you say you're having people come there out of all different backgrounds, did most people who graduate from U of M have like a similar type of concept on what the music was? Or did people there really support everyone having their own, I want to do singer-songwriter jazz or fusion jazz, or what was that like?
Yeah. I think everybody who has gone there moves on to do different things. And I think what that school really taught me the importance of is finding your own voice in the music, which I think ultimately is what it's all about.
Yeah. So who was like your biggest mentor there?
My biggest mentor was Bob Hurst. He was the bass professor, and of course he's played with.
Yeah, for the listeners that don't know, Bob Hurst is a bad boy.
Yeah, go. He is a bad boy indeed. Yeah. Go check out Bob Hurst.
Yeah, I heard him for the first time. Actually, I mean, you got to obviously spend a lot of time with him, but I heard him for the first time a couple weeks ago at the Jazz Showcase when he said, well, actually at the Jazz Festival.
Yeah.
But then he later sat in at the Jazz Showcase, and that was absolutely amazing. Yeah. He, Orrin Evans and Robert Hurst and Kyle Swan and Bobby Watson and the other person he was playing with at the Jazz Festival.
They were throwing it down.
They were throwing it down. They played rhythming, and it was some wild shit,
Yeah.
But what are some of the biggest lessons that you got from Bob Hurst?
Bob taught me a lot about rhythm, and rhythm as something that comes first. He says, if the rhythm is dope, if it's swinging, it doesn't matter what notes you play.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna sound good no matter what. It's as long as that feels good.
Right.
That kind of opened things up a whole lot for me. I don't have to pick the exact the quote unquote right notes, as long as you put the time and the feel and the groove and the rhythm first. That's where the music is. Yeah,
absolutely. I agree 100%, and that's some wise knowledge. I guess just for a little context, my biggest you saw Scott Hesse at the Jazz Showcase, but he was one of my biggest mentors in DePaul at DePaul University was Scott Hesse. I don't know if you've met Dana Hall yet.
Not yet.
In Chicago, or heard him play, but he was the jazz professor when I was there.
Right.
At school, and he also had a huge impact on. I think a lot of people there because he's also a very serious, amazing drummer, and Scott's a serious, amazing guitar player. Him and Dana actually, and Clark Summers. Do you know him?
Mm-hmm. I know of him. Yeah.
Yeah, he's also amazing bass player here in Chicago. Hope to have him on the show at some point.
Yeah, cool.
They released a record. Shout out to their record, Scott's record. It's amazing, like live trio record, and features some arrangements of standards that they did, and also some original music that Scott wrote. But it's amazing record, and I would definitely recommend checking that out. And we probably could listen to some when Scott comes on, because it's like I think there's like a we can't really play music from Spotify and only a couple seconds of music from YouTube, because it's like the podcast, so we're not supposed to do that. But if it's some dude's original music, we can play it all day. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
very cool.
Yeah. So, what were like lessons like with Bob Hurst's?
Lessons were at first intense, but that's only because I didn't have my stuff together like I should have, or I just didn't. I didn't quite know yet. So he he really lit a fire under me a little bit, which was good for me. He helped me get my time together. You know, most of the lessons would go like this. You come in and he says, okay, what do you want to play for me? And so I would have, you know, a couple tunes or a tune or something, and play it for him. Got to be able to play the melody, solo, walk, just like you were doing a concert, but like a one-man concert. And so then he would give critique after, and that was really, really helpful. One, I was talking about feel and time. He said, get some ankle bells.
Wow.
Get some ankle bells and strap them to your ankle, and then tap your foot when you play. And it will, you know, because you can hear when you make a mistake. You can hear when the bells lock in with what you're playing. So that actually really helped me a lot, and I still have my ankle bells and practice with them.
That's killing, man. Yeah, I mean, you practice with that all the time. That's gonna get your ass in shape.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
Man, that's awesome. Yeah, it must have just been really cool to like, you know, obviously, you know, as jazz musicians, we kind of grow up having heroes, and heroes are certainly like, you know, they're not real as in terms of like Superman, but like, you know, if you go into jazz or whatever you want to call it, you know, you want to play this type of music authentically, it's like, man, we all have our own personal heroes.
Yes.
You know, and I feel like it's, you know, Robert Hurst is definitely like a hero to many bass players, let alone musicians, you know.
Right.
And it's so cool to be able to, you know, be around or play with or even be in the same room as one of those guys.
Yeah.
You know, and just like
it's intimidating.
Yeah, it's super intimidating, and it's awesome because I don't know how many real careers there are like that. I mean, in the arts, I'm sure, you know, like comedy and you know, painting and cooking and things like that. But like where there's heroes, you have people you really look up to. But I feel like this is like a special thing that we get to do, to where actually we get to share the stage potentially with some of our heroes. Like how we get to play, you know, I like when I was in Nashville, Joel Fromm lived there, and I've always listened to his music, and it was like I've known him for records. The one I known him most for is that Surreal A-May Live at Smalls record. I don't know if you know that one, but it's a beautiful record, and Roy Hargrove's on it, and Joel Fromm's on it. But I love that record. I loved there's Omer Avital Live at Smalls thing too, where Joel's on it, and that's an amazing record. And he also has like Smalls must have been his place, but another Live at Smalls record with Kurt Rosewinkle on it, and I checked that out a lot. But I played a couple duo gigs with Joel, and like yeah, I was like wow myself, so I can't really believe it. But he just like playing with someone you like that, it's kind of like you look over and you're playing music and you're like, oh man, like this guy is actually here, like, and I'm playing music with him, and like we're both making sounds at the same time, and it's like, wow, you know, it's kind of like a surreal moment. But I feel like as you become a professional and you become a professional musician, like those things happen more and more, you know. So it's like playing with your heroes, I think, is just or learning from, or even just being around people that you've always looked up to is like such a cool thing to do, especially if they're nice people. And is like a thing everyone should do, is like seek out the people who are really, really good at what you want to do, and like try to learn from them. And I feel like school, you know, like I said, you could say what you want about it, but it does give people the opportunity to be around people who are really, really good at what they do, you know, especially if you want to keep like this type of jazz music alive. You know, it's like, you know, hang out with somebody who's really, really good at what they do for 4 years, and like be in a community of people who also want to do this for a while. And it's like, I feel like it's a pretty cool thing, you know. And then like in turn, it employs a lot of professional jazz musicians who like wouldn't be making that money otherwise, you know.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, and I feel like that's also a cool thing. You know, you look at you know, I feel like Michigan State, we could get into that a little bit more, you know. But like when I was in high school, I went to a Michigan State jazz camp, and I decided going there, almost went there. I think we talked about it. Yeah. Okay, we played a little bit, But you know, Rodney Whitaker also a hero, you know,
Definitely.
and I think it gives him an amazing opportunity to create a culture and like create a really amazing culture, you know, about the music. And I feel like, you know, if it wasn't for, you know, a university or educational system where people can learn about the music, like, you know, his whole idea, which is masterful, you know, and like all the things that he does wouldn't be around. So, yeah, I mean, let's hear a little bit about Michigan State now,
Yeah,
because
man.
what did you do there then?
Talk about mentorship,
Yeah,
because that is just like, and a community. It was just like everybody, the level of playing is so high, and everybody's so warm and welcoming. It really feels like a family. It's a really tight knit community, and it's really really great. Um, and also the faculty, you know, you got some of the best people in the world
yeah.
who do what they do,
Some
and
of the
you get to learn from them and play with them. They often hire a lot of their students for gigs, which is really really cool.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, so, yeah, that's something that I noticed about Michigan State is like, you know, I mean, didn't know this when I was 18, and I feel like it's hard to know that when you're 18, deciding on what school you go to. But like looking at it and looking at all the students that went there, it's like an amazing school, and it's like I feel like at a lot of other places, you know, I mean, they don't necessarily do that at DePaul as much, where the faculty hires their students, but that's something that I really think is awesome about what they did at
yeah,
Michigan State is that like
absolutely.
you know, Randy Napoleon hires his students to play in his bands
Yeah,
and like people who he taught and learned, and like it's just a testament to his teaching, and it's a testament to, you know, the school, and he's like believes in what he does, you know. I feel like that's super cool.
absolutely. My first gig here in Chicago was, I think I told you this, at the
Yeah.
Showcase with Michael Deese. That was just amazing. I've gigged with him several other times before that, and I've gigged with Walter Blanding Jr. and Randy Napoleon,
Yeah.
who's actually become a buddy of mine. We've been shedding a lot this summer, and he actually helped me record my debut album.
It's
So to have
amazing.
that kind of relationship with your mentors is,
Yeah.
you know,
Tell us a little bit about that, about the album and your relationship with him
yeah,
and the tunes you picked and all that.
cool. I would go over to Randy's house this past summer, and we would shed high tempos, and we had a gig up north in Michigan, so we were preparing for that, and also preparing for the record. So we shedding all this material, which was really really great. And he's also just a really really warm, nurturing guy. Um, so I chose a list of tunes for the record, just standards that I love, and they all turned out to be love songs. Which I didn't plan that, but that's just what it turned out to be. So the title of the album is going to be Love's Call,
Oh,
and
awesome.
so it's all love songs that I'm singing and playing on, and Randy helped me get arrangements together, and I mentioned Nat King Cole earlier. Um, so I already had a relationship to the music of Nat King Cole and you know, vocal jazz, but to have Randy helping me, you know, who was Freddie Cole's guitar player
Right,
and
right.
arranger for the last 13 years of his career or something like that, you know, that's a whole other deeper connection
Oh,
that I have. So he helped me write arrangements and, you know, workshop things, and I'd say, hey Prof, how about, you know, what about this? And he'd help me fine tune it and everything. So he's just been really, really, you know, pouring a lot of time and energy into me and this project. So it's been wonderful. I have him, and David Alvarez the third is an amazing drummer. My brother in time, as we call each
yeah.
other, and he also went to University of Michigan and then did grad school at MSU. So we kind of have like the the go blue, go
Yeah.
green. I
Yeah.
call it the blue and green
Connection.
connection.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and then I have Sequoia Snyder on piano, who's an amazing pianist, and they were both fellow graduate students with me, so I got to play with them and know them really well. And yeah, I'm really excited and proud of this record.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I can't wait to listen to it. When does it come out?
It's coming out on Valentine's Day, 2025.
Oh, amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. Okay, so you did some of your favorite songs and arrangements of your favorite standards.
Yeah.
Right. So how did the arranging process work, or where did you get your ideas?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it I picked up little things from the singers that I love and the musicians that I love, doing these standards.
So a lot from like Nat King Cole and
Mel Torme and Sarah Vaughan. I got a lot of ideas from them about how to, interpret, vocally, and also how to, put certain hits in certain places and lines. And Randy really helped a lot with that. The concept behind, these arrangements is, for Randy, is all about how can we make it flow? Like, how can we make the ride cymbal and, how can we make the swing go without disrupting the flow of the time and the groove?
Right.
So how can we make everything just add to it instead of take away?
Yeah.
Which I thought was really cool.
Man, that's masterful knowledge to learn.
Yeah.
I have my own little connection with Randy. He was, I mean, when I went to audition there, is like when I was 18. I guess that was like 7-8 years ago now, which is crazy. Yeah. But like, he was the sweetest dude,
Yeah.
sweetest guy, and he, which I still use to this day, which is funny, is he invited me to his Dropbox of like all these awesome guitar trio charts, all these charts of like Kenny Burrell and all these West charts and all these like some of his originals, like all the tunes he used for one of his records, like Gru's tunes, like all these amazing, really hip tunes. He like all these awesome guitar tunes. He gave me like all these charts for them. Like the first day I met him when I was 18, and I still have them on my Dropbox. And so I like have to thank him for that.
That's
because it's
cool.
like him and all the MSU students like would, I guess, I don't know if they still do, but they at one point in time they all compiled charts there for all these Grant Green tunes, like what Kenny Burrell tunes, and I still have to thank him for that sometime when I see him, but like I'll let him know that I've like definitely used them and play those tunes, which is amazing. And he's one of the sweetest, nicest, most killing guitar players I know.
He's a bad boy.
Yeah, so shout out to him.
He knows like every Bird head.
Yeah.
He can play every song by Bird, just about.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting idea. How important do you feel like Charlie Parker is in your playing and being a jazz musician?
Oh yeah, definitely very, very important. Bird and Monk, I really spend a lot of time deeply studying these guys who were playing at Minton's, Monk and Bird, and I've been really diving deep into Oscar Pettiford recently.
Yeah, you were telling me that.
Yeah, really just crucial to the bass, and in terms of how he put.
For the listeners who don't know, why is Oscar Pettiford crucial to the bass?
He was one of the first people to actually put bebop in the bass context. He transferred what Bird and Diz were playing and then put it onto the bass, and he figured out how to play so melodically. A lot of the bassists before him were playing walking bass solos or really rhythmically, but he was really playing these strong, beautiful hip melodies on the bass, and just like a technically just a beast. All one finger too. You hear some of this the stuff
One
that he's
finger in
playing.
his right hand.
Yeah, right. You hear just some of the stuff that he's playing. It's like, whoa. How did he do that with just one finger?
So was he at, who did he record with, or like how did you first hear of his records
Um,
or his bass playing?
I think probably I must have heard about him in high school. I don't remember, but I remember knowing his name. But once I got to college, then I really started to dive deep in tricketism, and that tune alone is like a bass masterclass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like Oscar Pettiford, I've known him, and I've always known like Paul Chambers to be one of the guys.
Yeah.
And Ron Carter, obviously, like Ray Brown
Yeah.
to be one of the top guys. Like even who was the guy who was playing bass at Mittens with all them? Wasn't
OP. Oscar Pettiford.
It was.
Yeah,
He was the guy
He
at
was
Mittens.
like the guy, right?
Dang. Okay.
Yeah.
So he was playing with Monk and all those
Yeah.
guys, and he was playing with Bird and Diz, and yeah. Well, I mean, like we've all like, I know me and you probably have researched a ton or understand don't really understand fully what that scene was like at Mittens Playhouse, but back in the '60s. But like, why is that so important? Why is that scene so important to the music that you play today?
That's just kind of where it really evolved into the next stage, coming out of like the late 30s into the 40s.
Yeah, so like that Mittens was like this bar in Harlem. I still think they have a Mittens Playhouse open today.
Oh, cool.
I don't think that it's the original place,
Mm-hmm.
but I think they still have jazz there. I think it's just a different location or something. But Mittens is kind of like the spot where OP was playing, Kenny Clark, Thelonious Monk, and they were like the house trio.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And where was the spot that Bird and Dizzy would play before going to Mittens?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure.
I think it was like some spot that was like another club, and like I believe I'm pretty certain this is how it went down. If any jazz historians wants to argue, you can send me an email. But it was like where Bird and Dizzy would play an earlier gig, Monk and that trio would play a different gig, and then late at night the house set at Mittens, and late at night it would turn into a jam session, and that's when Bird would sometimes show up. Charlie Parker had a lot of his own personal issues, so he didn't always show up, to things in general, but he did show up to Mittens quite a lot, and Dizzy would show up, and Dizzy and Bird are known as like some of the two, and Monk are known as some of the two founders of bebop.
Monk is an incredibly overlooked guy in jazz history. There's an amazing biography that exists by Robin D.G. Kelly called Thelonious Monk. I think it's the Life and Times of an American Original or something like that.
Wow. But
it's by Robin D.G. Kelly, and I implore everyone to go check that book out.
Yeah. Why do you think Monk is overlooked?
I think because his concept was so related, deeply tied to what I think a lot of people would say Bird and Diz were the guys who founded bebop, but his concept was so deeply related, but it sounds so different, and just because it's on the piano doesn't mean it's not bebop. So he found out a way to his way of improvising was to play the melody but to embellish it, and that meant using a lot of dissonant, crunchy intervals, and really, I was talking about rhythm earlier, really swinging, rhythmic displacement, and all this different stuff. He would, as a way to embellish a melody.
Yeah. I mean, Monk to me is I agree 100%. And Monk to me is a hero, absolutely hero. I've learned a lot of his songs and really, listen to a lot of his improvisation. I think his composition was amazing.
Genius.
Genius composition. I mean, this is making me think of something right now, but when I was in New York, probably like a year ago, I've heard of him, but I officially met this guitar player, Miles Okazaki.
Yeah.
Do you know him?
Yeah. He taught at U of M when I was there.
Oh wow!
So I took a rhythm class with him actually.
Oh no way! Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. But I met him in New York. I was watching a Dan Weiss gig.
Yes.
And he was just there, and he was at Bar Bayou. But anyway, I didn't realize this, but he told me that he like recorded every single one of Monk's songs by memory. You know, all his 70 compositions.
Right.
And did it within 2 days in his basement, with a recorder, and he just played them from the top of his head, which is for if any listener doesn't understand how ridiculous that is to do, and how some of Monk's songs are extremely complicated and extremely unique. So it's how he memorized all that stuff. I mean, but Monk's stuff is also unique, but it's quite singable.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like, if you really love it, those songs, it's just you can sing them,
Right.
And I feel like that's just something you could do. But I mean, as a guitar player, hearing him do things like Trinkle Tinkle is pretty insane,
Yeah. Miles, he's a total badass. Yep.
Yeah. But let's take it back to Monk for a second. I mean, Miles did all that Monk, but a couple other guitar players did Monk albums, which I feel like is quite awesome. Mm-hmm. Bobby Broom did a Monk album.
Oh yeah.
Peter Bernstein did a Monk album.
Yeah.
And Bobby's Monk album, I think, is quite phenomenal. Have you checked that out?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think?
Oh man, I first found out about Bobby Broom just a little bit before I moved here. I came to visit in December, almost a year ago, and I saw him play at the showcase, and he played some of his Monk arrangements, and I forget what he played. Maybe it was Epistrophe or something, but it was mind blowing.
Yeah. Peter Bernstein as well has a Monk record. I mean, Bobby's Monk album is amazing, and how he could come up with such hip arrangements of those tunes that are pretty much already arranged, because Monk tunes, I mean, they're not really arranged, but I don't know, how many different versions of Epistrophe can you do? Monk, he does it different every single time,
right. Mm-hmm.
Which is amazing, and it's to do it differently and also in the spirit of the music is quite masterful.
Yeah.
And
much how a singer would interpret.
Right. Yeah. Much definitely spot on. And I think that Bobby did that really well, and I think Bernstein also did it really well. Bernstein's Monk album is absolutely phenomenal as well, and he has amazing Monk stuff. So what's a Monk album people should check out, and what's some Monk that's really impacted you?
Oh man. Well, as far if you just want to hear Monk play standards, and also speaking of Oscar Pettiford, check out the unique Thelonious Monk. Check out Monk plays Duke Ellington.
Right.
Because Oscar Pettiford was also in Duke Ellington's band for a long time, and he's on both of those records with Monk, playing these amazing standards. As far as Monk's compositions go, I love Underground. I love Brilliant Corners. I love Crisscross. Just go crazy. Go crazy on Monk. Go check him out.
Yeah, me and my one of my buddies from Nashville, because I just moved back from there earlier this August, but he wasn't a jazz musician. He was he's a drummer, but he was more of a, I don't know, didn't really understand, as most people do who don't really get paired up with a mentor. He doesn't really understand why jazz is so important, and like the culture and tradition behind it, and just like what good jazz sounds like or is, you know what I mean? It's like most people, you know, who aren't, you know, around a community or like around parents who are exposed to music or things like that, never really get exposed to jazz, or really never know how to like what it's all about, you know? And my buddy Cameron, we why I bring this up is because we listened to the Monk's Music record together, and we're all just buddies, you know, because like we're buddies, and I was just kind of like, man, you should check this out. Like, I think you would love it. And so, you know, it was one of those things where it's Art Blakey on drums on that record.
Yeah.
And Art Blakey, I think, is one of like the most masterful, if, you know, one of them drummers to ever, you know, exist. His drumming is just amazing. His band leading skills are amazing. Art Blakey can say enough good things, but his young Art Blakey on that record, and just kind of like listening to the stuff he was doing on the drum set, and just like really listening to it, because like, you know, you could put on a record and just have it going in the background, but like when you really sit down and listen to something like Monk, and like how Art Blakey plays with Monk specifically, is quite amazing stuff to like listen to, and just even to how that stuff it's how that stuff even exists, how like people play like that. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
You know, just wild stuff.
Yeah.
And so like when we sat down and listened to it, and when we really got into the details, I'm like pointing some stuff out, be like, oh, like, you know, listen to that, or like that was wild thing that he did right there, or just things like that. And we're like commenting on the music, and like starting a dialogue about these specific nuances that are happening in a record, you know, is like how you learn really, and how you like understand how to play the music, number one, what the music's all about. And yeah, I mean, deep, I can't say enough good things about just like deep listening to something, really putting something on, and like Monk's Music, you know, and really just listening to how the band is interacting with each other, and really like, you know, really listening, like sitting down, and like that's your goal. It's like, I'm going to listen to this song, and I'm going to listen to the drum set, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I'm putting on that song and listening to the drum set, or I'm only going to listen to how Monk plays. And it's like, then you start to notice things about how he's not playing at a certain part. You know, you start to notice how he decided to comp for Coltrane's solo, but not for Coleman Hawkins' solo, you know, or you notice how he's, or when he's not comping, Art Blakey takes over some more, you know, comping language on the snare drum or whatever, you know, things like that you wouldn't really catch if you weren't deep listening to something, you know?
I don't think a lot of people realize this until they see jazz happen live. I think for a lot of people, how they get exposed to it, or how they, you know, get into it, how they begin to understand it, is to actually see it happening rather than hearing it. Because I think once people see how the musicians physically interact with one another, then they kind of, you know, everything kind of clicks for them.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%. Like that's a great point. You know, like seeing people really good at what they do at a young age. You know, I was really fortunate to see Roy Hargrove a few times before he passed away, but the first time I saw him was at the Jazz Showcase when I was like 16 years old.
Wow.
And I went down with a couple buddies. I was like, on the way down, I was like, who are we seeing? Like, I don't even know this guy's name, really.
Yeah.
You know, because I was just getting into the music. I didn't really understand. But like seeing a show like that and just watching a complete master play is like also very inspiring. And like, you know, I mean, like I love a place like Nashville, but like one of the I don't want to say complaints, but one of the things that I feel like lacks there that is in a place like Chicago is the amount of really masterful musicians in this specific subgenre of music, if you want to say bam, jazz, any type of style like that, that you know, it's hard for people to learn because they're not exposed to a really high quality level of the music, you know.
Yeah.
Like when you see Robert Hurst play, it's like, oh wow, like that's how it's done, and like, you know, or wow, like that was amazing, like how can it be like that high quality, you know. And there are amazing good musicians, but there was a ton of young musicians there, and there's a ton of, you know, up and coming people who are just starting to make it. But like in Chicago and like New York and other places like that, there's people who've been doing this thing at a really, really high level for a lot of years, you know. And there is like that, like people like that in Nashville, but just different styles. I'm talking about more specifically like jazz,
Right.
And improvised instrumental music,
Yeah.
maybe not instrumental, but like, you know what I mean. You know, and I feel like that is so important to someone's understanding and learning of music, is to like to have a really, to create a culture and a community, you know, you need to have like, you know, people who know what they're doing and who
Right.
are supportive.
One thing I heard about Roy is that he would love the jam session. Like he would make it a point to go out to the session and play with people, and that he saw that as a really big part.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you saw this on Nick Payton's Instagram, but like he said, like when Roy passed away, that the biggest, like the things that hurt the jazz scene most in New York was the closing of was Art Blakey passing away, number 2. The number 1, number 2 was like the closing of Bradley's, and number 3 was Roy passing away, you know. And I feel like that's true because, you know, like he was a master at quite a young age, you know, going around to sessions and playing with the young guys, you know, like showing people how it's done, and not in an egotistical way either, you know, in a way that like, you know, is a love for the music, like loves the melody so much, loves the music so much that he wants to like play it to the best of his ability, you know, and it's for the love of it, you know, and like it's not for an ego, you know, it's not for himself, you know, it's for the music. And I feel like that's a really important concept too, you know, is like doing things for the love of it and love the music. But
Absolutely.
yeah, all right, so gigs, you've played a lot of gigs, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, right. What were some of like how important are like playing gigs to a musician who's trying to learn this music, and what are some of like the best and worst experiences you've had playing gigs, you know?
Well,
that's a big thing that you do, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, well, for one, we were just talking about the live community aspect. I think if you want to play jazz, you have to perform it. I mean, you can spend your life to be a professional session musician or a composer, but I think then you might be remiss, or you might be missing the point a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that
I guess like a better question to ask or concept to talk about is because we're talking about school, and we'll get back to that a little bit more, but like, you know, a lot of musicians learn music in school nowadays and they don't really have the necessary gig experience.
Yeah.
So how important do you think your gig experience has been in your development, and speak on that?
Yeah, very incredibly important. I think, especially as a bass player, your job is to nurture the band and the music that's happening. So to try and play with as many different people as you possibly can, you're going to have a whole different education about what the music you're playing is. You know, you could learn about jazz in school, but you may not quite know how to play in the style of, you know, the 1920s, or unless you go play with somebody who's playing that music, or like a Cuban band, that's a completely other thing. Similar concepts theoretically, but the feeling of Latin music is completely different from swing. So to actually have the experience of playing with all these different people is a whole education in itself.
Yeah. For sure. I definitely can speak on that. But what are some of like the biggest lessons you've learned on the bandstand?
Keep your ears open. Yeah, always be listening to what other people are doing, so that you can best do your best to support them. Whether it's a solo or whether it's an arranged section of a piece or something. Yeah, always listening so you can kind of anticipate or go with somebody if something is to happen, which it likely will.
Yeah.
Who's to say what will happen on the bandstand?
Yeah. I mean, I know I have a certain few that I could talk about, but yeah, I mean, you never know what's going to happen. Is there a certain negative experience that happened that really shapes the way that you play gigs now?
Um, Musically, no. I mean,
Good.
you know, you will always do your best to try and add to the music and to make it have a feeling or a vibe. Um, my negative experiences would just have to be with the people involved. Nothing really, not necessarily musical, but maybe something that they've said
Right.
off stage that was really jive.
Yeah. Yeah, there hasn't been like an experience where like you're playing and someone like says something really crazy to you while you're playing or something, and then
Like people in like the audience, you mean?
I guess the audience or like how at the jazz showcase where Bobby Watson was
Yeah.
like telling the drummer, he's like, "Oh, play like this," or "I want this out of you,"
He's
or
like bring it down,
or
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like that, and like. I've personally been told as a guitar player that like in the middle of songs, that I've been too loud before.
Sure.
Turn
Right.
down. And it's
Right.
like, I guess I don't really look at that as a negative experience. I kind of look
Yeah.
at that as like someone who it could be viewed as a negative experience if you're, self-conscious, but like if you're in it for the music, then it's not, it's a
Right.
positive thing.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, like gig working and playing gigs is like, definitely comes with a bunch of positive and negative experiences and learning experiences.
Yeah.
Like to you, what is like the best gig for you? Like what
Best gig.
Like the best gig you've done or the best experience you've had,
Man.
playing a gig,
Man, best.
No, that's kind of open-ended one, but like, I mean, like best overall experience, like gigging. I've definitely had a few myself, but like something that you've just like, man, like I think about this gig often really shaped the way that I play, or like I learned a lot here, or this happened at this gig and I remember it, or the landmark gig, first time you got to play, whatever.
Okay. I think that it all depends on, how it makes you feel and how you can make the audience feel. If I can get an audible or, visible reaction out of the audience, then I think that, that makes me feel really good. Or, sometimes I've played background music gigs at restaurants where nobody's really listening. There's no money in the tip jar, but I just played a solo that, felt smooth as butter.
Yeah.
And I'd come away from that feeling really, really happy because I've done something to serve the music, even if people may not realize it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's a tough question. It all depends.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we've played, being a jazz musician especially, it's like we played tons of background gigs and tons of like main gigs that are amazing. And like hopefully, you know, the older and better we get, the better our gigs get as well, you know, and like the more
Hopefully.
yeah, hopefully, you know, or like, you know, meeting the right people. Like I want to be
Yeah.
playing jazz festivals, you know,
Right.
and I want to be traveling and performing the stuff that I love, and I want to play the Blue Note Tokyo one day. I want to like tour Europe on a tour. I want to
Yeah.
like I don't guess it doesn't have to be like just jazz, but music that I'm super passionate about, and like it has the things that I like and qualities that I like within music in it, you know?
There you go.
And I feel like that's a better way to say it. You know, and I feel like I still have a lot of aspirations that I'm trying to get to
Yeah.
and accomplish. And I feel like those, you know, it's part of the reason why I'm moved back to Chicago is because like I want to play Chicago Jazz Festival one day. I want to play the Green Mill. I want to play, you know, have a headlining spot at the Showcase, things
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like that would be amazing, and those are really cool goals to work towards, you know. And I feel like that's also a really cool part about being a musician is that there's always something to work towards, you know, unless you're at the top of the game, which very few people are there, you
Yeah,
know.
it's pretty lonely up there.
Yeah, it's definitely pretty lonely up there, and I feel like it's fun to explore that type of side.
Yeah.
Um,
The more gigs you do, or the more you say yes to playing gigs as a sideman, then the more work you will accumulate.
yes, yeah.
And if
I mean,
you can
for
just
sure.
you just be responsible and show up on time, do your best to play the music, be a nice guy, that's all that really matters.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we're kind of talking about this like major with the gig, but like things that you face that are hard. I guess a broader question to ask or a broader topic to talk about would be like major challenges is you faced as like being a musician, you know? What are I mean, for me, like making enough money all the time
Yeah.
is a hard challenge, you know, and like you really have to get out there and hustle to make it work.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like talk on like what are like the major challenges you face being a bass player?
Yeah, money, definitely. I would say like a life balance or a routine even. I'm struggling to find a routine to follow because gigging is so sporadic. Sometimes it'll be like, man, I need a bass player. You free tomorrow night? It's like,
Yeah.
yes, I'm free. Okay,
Right.
now what does the rest of my day look like tomorrow before I go do that gig? And then what if I have to wake up super early the next morning? It's all so sporadic, and it's no day or week or month is ever the same.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. But you kind of learn to adapt and be flexible,
Yeah.
and also learning to when to say no has been a big learning
Yeah. Well,
experience for me.
how did you learn to say no? Was there experience?
Yeah, I think recently over the past couple of years in grad school, I tried to be a gig fiend and do grad school at the same time, and it just wasn't cutting it in my first year at MSU because it was, I was worried about money. I wanted to, get my name and my face out there, but it was taking away from what I needed to do in school and in my personal life. So I had to actually really take I don't know if it was severe, but I had to take a serious step back and be like, thanks for asking me to play with you, to be on your gig, but I have to decline, and I got to focus on what I need to do.
Like finishing your grad degree.
Finishing your grad degree and being prepared for my lessons with Rodney, it was taking away from that, and that looking back, that was a big regret. But I feel like I was able to get it together and finish strong, and I got a lot out of my time in grad school.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a grad degree yet, and that's definitely something that I've been considering. Um, I don't know like why did you decide to pursue a grad degree?
Um, I've viewed it as more time to hone some knowledge and some skills. I talked about, everybody at U of M coming at jazz from different perspectives and genres and stuff. Studying with Bob, and I really fell in love with bebop and wanted to dive deeper into that. And I went back home, lived at home, and went to school to study with Rodney and the amazing faculty there, so I could, just have some more time and experience to dive deep and to also learn how to be a teacher, learn how to educate students.
Yeah, is teaching something you want to do and pursue?
Um, I Yeah, I think so. I think in order to play jazz, you have to teach to some degree. Um, and I enjoy teaching. I love the bass. I want to tell people all about the bass, and
Yeah.
I love jazz. I want to tell people all about it. So
Yeah, absolutely.
but for now, playing I think is a priority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, we were talking a little bit about this before we got on air, but it seems like I'm probably going to step up my teaching game
Yeah.
up this upcoming year. And like, I've always been like a jazz guitar player. That's how I've like kind of made a living ever since I graduated school. And even in school, like how I got money was gigs, and like I feel like this upcoming year, I was talking about a job. I'm got offered a job teaching classical middle school band. And it's
Right.
like I played the trumpet throughout high school and college, but I've never really, I don't have a teaching certificate. I don't like. I have some experience teaching. I've taught like a general music class and I've taught a jazz band before, but I don't have a ton teaching classical band, and it's like something that I'm like would feel like would only give me more experience at the end of the day to
Yeah.
like know what I'm doing, so I can get to that final goal of like, or that like, I don't know if there's ever gonna be a final goal, but like the bigger picture of like doing what my heroes do, like
Right.
like Scott Hesse, my mentor and hero, one of my guitar heroes out of many. He teaches too, he's like, I think he's one of the best guitar players ever. I mean, same with Bob and Rodney, like some of the best bass players ever, and
Amazing pedagogues.
amazing
Yeah.
pedagogues, and just really have their know how to explain what they do. And I feel like they've probably gone through like the same experiences I'm going through, get offered wild opportunities, to teach this, do this for a little bit,
Right.
make some, see if you like this, maybe later in a couple of years you try something different, maybe in next year you do it for a year, you see what you learn, and maybe you end up really liking it. Maybe I really discover that I don't like that. Maybe I really discover that no, classical band's not for me. Maybe I really discover that,
Right.
oh man, like even though I didn't have a great experience, I really learned how to get a section together tight, and it's only going to provide skills for when I like want to do that, college level jazz band, or like college level small group, how to direct them at a really high level, because if I can deal and make eighth graders sound good at, in classical bands,
Yeah. Right.
I feel like I'd have a pretty good skills on how to make a college level people who actually really know what they're doing sound great, and like just developing and adding skills along the way.
Yeah, that's
It's
exciting.
Like, is a great thing to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I mean, obviously my goal too is to play. I want to be a performer and pedagogue. I want to know a lot about the music. I'm a historian as well.
Right.
Musicologist, maybe you could even say, but I don't have a degree in that or anything. But yeah, and so I feel like these things and these other opportunities around music only give you a bigger appreciation and a bigger overall picture for what type of musician, educator, person you want to be in this world. And I feel like the impact you have on other people as an educator is super profound.
Yes.
And
Especially in middle school. You're
yeah,
going to go on to inspire a lot of kids.
yeah, inspire a lot of kids, and unsure about like the future, but also get to have explain my musical ideals and what I think is the most valuable thing in music, and really, I feel like get to pass on what my favorite educators gave me.
Right.
Which I think is a really powerful thing, because like I wouldn't be here close to where I am without the educators I've had.
Yes. Yeah.
And it feels right to start thinking about how I could give back and still learn from that, because it's like also education is one of those things where I've heard from the best educators that they learn as much from the student as the student learns from the educator, and I feel like that's an important thing too, is because I don't know what I'm going to learn. I don't know what I'm embarking on. I could learn a ton of stuff. But yeah, so the education thing I think is great. So yeah, I mean, you just moved to Chicago. You're trying to play some bass. You have all this amazing experience behind you. You got a new album coming out soon. Thinking about teaching. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh man, I like you said many of the things that you just said. I'd like to be playing at these places like the Showcase and the Green Mill and all these really great venues and clubs, and I just hope to bring lots of music and joy to the people of Chicago, and I really enjoy band leading. I'd love to have a group and trio, quartet, and if I have the opportunity, I'd love to throw some horns in there.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, and compose maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking to, as I kind of just moved back last month, and similar time that you moved here, I guess, like within a couple weeks. But something that I'm trying to do as a composer, as a player, is get like as a working band together of the stuff I want to say with music.
Yes.
And there's a lot of really talented musicians here in Chicago that will allow us to do so.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I and I feel like also, as wise, like people, to bring it back to the education thing for a second, is like why people do that is so they can like pick and choose a little bit of the most meaningful gigs they want to do and put a lot of energy into those gigs, instead of having to take every gig you get offered just because you have to.
Yep.
And I feel like at a certain level that like it becomes more meaningful when you are when you're blessed enough to be in a position to where you can take the gigs that you want to take, and to take the gigs that are really meaningful for you.
Definitely.
And that, like, put a lot of time and energy into those gigs and having a great performance for them, because like you were saying, like if you have to take gigs every single night, which I'm not opposed to, I will say yes to a gig if I get offered it, but to be lucky enough to be in that position to where you have control,
mm-hmm.
and you really, it's all about the creative process, and I really like you not struggling for money, because also it's hard to be creative when you really need money. It's like, I mean, speaking from experience, I'm a composer as well. I have an EP out there that I'm proud of featuring a few of my compositions. One of the bass player's compositions, Simon Chacho, and a George Benson tune, Affirmation. Cool. It's like a little EP out there, and I think it sounds great. I mean, obviously I released that 3 years ago. I feel like, listening back to it's always a little, I like some songs better than others, but like, yeah, I mean, I definitely want, those are some of my compositions. I definitely want to, improve upon my skills and create, a name for myself as a composer as well as improvising musician, and, so, what, I know I can get into this for myself, but you were talking about band leading. What are some things that you look for in the musicians that you hire to be in your own band?
First, they gotta be good people. They gotta be,
Yeah.
friendly
important is
people. Um, I think if you're not a drag to be around, and you can, execute the music with, feeling, I think that's everything. Also, I think it also depends on what kind of music that I want to play. I have lots of ideas about different shows that I want to do. Back home in Lansing, I did a Monk tribute show. I did a Nat King Cole tribute. These are things that I really love doing, and studying and diving deep, and with these different artists. I want to eventually do something with Oscar Pettiford, and his cello playing.
Yeah, you were talking about that.
Yeah. So to find the people who are, good, nice people, but also have this similar interest in kind of this intense study with me, people who are passionate about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
How important, you mentioned like being a good person, like how important is that in your overall deciding? Is that like if you could play, like you play really well, are you gonna overlook the personality? Like how does that work for you?
Well, that's just gonna make my job as a band leader more difficult, and I don't want to. That's just a whole bunch of BS.
Yeah.
I don't have time or the energy for it. So
Right.
I need you to be, I need you to be with me.
Yeah, yeah.
Not against me.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like as a musician, like you run into instances where you're maybe you played a gig with the person you don't like that much,
Yeah.
and like just because you had to do it, and like most of the time the reason why people don't like somebody is because they think they're a dick, or maybe there's other things where I don't know, but
Right.
like you just don't like the person, you don't think he's a great guy, but or person or woman or whatever, but I think something that I've realized, and like actually what I had a lesson with Joel from down in Nashville, and one of the things that he told me, that really had a profound impact on me is that like I took a lesson with him and we were just playing tunes in his apartment and just talking about, people's paths in the music and, his path versus mine, whatever, just talking to him about how he got to where he was. And, like the jam sessions, like any jam session, it's like in Nashville, like the jams weren't that amazing. There's a lot of people who, thought that they could play jazz and like went up there and sang like What a Wonderful World. And, it was like, okay, it was like, man, like, I don't know whether to like cry or clap, right now. And sometimes it was good, but it wasn't like, in the tradition of the music that we love and the tradition of the music that they were playing up in Mittens Playhouse or anything like that, bebop, even swing, even ragtime, if you want to call it. It was like nothing close to that tradition. It was kind of like, it was like a lot of people throwing the dartboard, like kind of, I don't know. You know what I mean? It just wasn't a great...
I call it karaoke night.
Yeah. It was like a lot of singers they invited up there. But, oh man, what was I saying before that?
Joel Fromm.
Oh, Joel. Okay, yes. That's perfect. Joel, when I took the lesson with him, I asked him, I'm like, what are like a bad session? Like when you go to a jam session that's not great, like how do you stay so positive? Because Joel is one of the nicest cats that I know. Like seriously, such a sweetheart of a guy.
Oh, that's so cool.
And so nice. And I was like, man, because like a problem, I definitely will admit it. Like I think every young musician goes through these phases of like, having an ego and not having an ego and trying to not lose the ego and like, comparing themselves with other musicians, like only wanting to talk to the person who's great or whatever. But I mean, when I talked to Joel, I was just like, man, how do you have such a great positive attitude even when the music's not that great? And he was like, man, I just like You know, I judge people based on the personality they have, not the musician they are.
Yeah.
You know, and I feel like even just that small little phrase from somebody so amazing like Joel, who's so killing, it's like, you know, it's like kind of realizes that it makes me realize that you, number one, you don't have to be serious you don't have to be a serious person to take the music seriously.
Right.
You know, and also like there's so many amazing cool things that you can get out of talking to people, or conversations that you can get into that you never necessarily would have had otherwise. And it turns out that most people are pretty cool when you talk to them, you know, and you're like a nice dude in return. And like, you know, I feel like Joel is like a huge beneficiary of that, because he's just talking to people, having a great time, and then they find out that he's a really killing tenor player, and they're like, oh, no way, like I just talked to this guy at the bar, he's super chill, you know, like what the hell, you know. And I feel like that's like one of the coolest things about just being a musician, and also just being like a cool person. It's just that like making friends and you know, like having great people around you at all times, I feel like is so important, because like you said, there's not enough time I don't have enough time for people being against me. You know, it's like I need people to put myself in the best position for success, to, you know, support what I'm doing. I'll support them in return, you know, not like, you know, in like a real passionate way, not like in a way that's like, you know, you just want to see your friends succeed.
It's all about community.
Yeah, it's all about community. And
that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and I feel like that is so important in playing this music, because no one's ever going to be the best, you know?
Nope.
And so, I mean, we're, you know, the best music, and we have our own heroes, and the generation after us will have their own heroes, and, you know, the cycle will keep on going. You know, all we can do is try to do the best we can, you know? Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I totally agree that I think that the people in your bands should be great people as well. You know, something I'm looking for in my bandmates.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So like your album, they're all amazing dudes, right?
Yeah. And Sequoia is an amazing woman. Yeah. And I have Olivia Van Gore on there as well. She's a vocalist from Michigan, she's featured on a duet, and she's somebody who's been a friend of mine for several years now, and we have sung duets together. We have like an ongoing program that we do where we do like the history of jazz duets. So that's another project where I get to dive deep with, you know, a cool, passionate person about you know, the style of music.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's featured on a tune, and Randy Napoleon's an amazing guy. And,
yeah, that's awesome.
David Alvarez is my brother.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, before we wrap it up here, I mean, because I feel like we can keep on going all night if we want to, but before we wrap it up, and before I ask my final question, is there anything you want to let the audience know about? You know, we have a gig coming up this weekend.
Yes, we do.
Reuben and I are playing with fantastic drummer Kyle Swan at the St. Charles Jazz Weekend, who is featuring tons of amazing, great artists. I'm pretty stoked. It's my 9th year playing that festival. I grew up in St. Charles, Illinois, if you didn't know that. And they've been having this jazz weekend for 12, 13 years, and I've been playing at it for 9. So I'm playing at one of the venues I'm playing at on Saturday night. I've been playing there for the whole time I've been doing it, 9 years. So the crowd is pretty awesome out there. There's people like last year at this place we're playing together in McNally's. Like I have a bunch of people came up to me and it was like, oh, we've seen you here for like 4 years. Every year we come to see you. And it's like having that experience is pretty cool. You know,
that's
like
so sweet. Having
people who've like kind of seen you grow and support what you do is like, you know, what it's all about. But yeah, is there
this Sunday?
Yeah, this Sunday we're playing a gig. But is there anything else you want to let the listeners know about? Yeah.
I would just say that thanks for having me on, and I have a GoFundMe currently to help raise money for this album that I'm going to release.
That's the shit.
The money goes towards studio time. My bandmates, they got to get paid, and copies of CDs, promotional material, so I can hire a promoter, and also for the really cool album photography and graphic design by my buddy Stephen Glenn. He's a photographer out of Lansing.
Yeah.
So you can check it out at Reuben Stump's debut album.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I believe so. That's the name of the GoFundMe. So you can Google that, and anything. If you feel inclined, please check it out. Please read it, and even possibly donate. Anything you can contribute would be deeply, deeply appreciated. If you donate $30 or more, I will send you a signed copy of the CD.
Let's go. So is like the did you already like pay out the bandmates, or do you raising money for that already?
I'm raising money for it. Yes.
Yeah. So did you record it already?
Yep, it's recorded. I just finished editing it with my sound engineer, and it's coming to you.
Is that you also have to pay the sound engineer?
Yep. Got to pay for studio time, mixing and mastering.
So making an album is not cheap.
No.
No. No, but it's something that's you're really proud of, and like investing in yourself.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, it's a way of expressing myself, but also to help my career. And also, I was talking about community. I view it as part of a community. I had to hire people to help me make it, to play it, to do the art involved, and it's a collaborative effort.
Yeah, there you go. So you heard it here, folks. Donate on the GoFundMe to help Reuben's album. Before we wrap it up, I just wanted to ask something that I ask everybody who comes on here is just what's one sentence, a few sentences of advice you'd give to your younger self or a young musician who wants to pursue this career path?
Oh, man. Play to your strengths.
There you go.
Yeah, play to your strengths. I think coming up, I was surrounded by a lot of amazing musicians, and I wanted to be involved and play the way they played, but it wasn't ever really me. And so that's something that I've been figuring out recently is how can I channel my own personal expression and through the music. And that would be to, figuring out what I'm good at, what I like, and the people that I like to play with. So that those, play to your strengths.
Awesome. I love that. All right. Well, we're gonna wrap it up. So thank you guys for listening to Let's Cool One, and we'll be back here next week. Thank you, Reuben, for joining us. Check out his album, and hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. All right. Peace.